So, you may well know that we do not have control over the external world. And that really, truthfully, the only thing that we have control over is ourselves. The way in which we respond to what's happening, the way in which we look after our inner world. And all things in life, in the living world, require being nurtured in order to thrive. And there are 4 aspects of self that really need this nurturance. And I just want to make a quick comparison to the living world. So if we think about a plant in order to survive, it needs adequate light. It needs the right environment. It needs to be fed with water and other nutrients in order to really thrive. And we're exactly the same as the living world, the same as the earth. If we're not looking after our earth, it starts to show up the cracks. And what do we see in the climate? We see this happening in the climate right now, yeah? And so there are 4 aspects of self that really require being nurtured in order for us to thrive. And these 4 aspects are mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And we need to be nurturing each aspect of these in order to feel whole, but also in order to feel like we have the right amount of energy and that we're able to live a really fulfilling life. So I'm going to go through each of these 4 aspects of self, and I would love to hear from you in the comments below whether one of these areas is an area that you really need to spend a bit more time on nurturing. So the first one is physical. So this is our physical health and well-being. And this is basically looking after our bodies physically in terms of movement, but also in terms of the food, the water that we put in, and then of course also the rest and the sleep that we have, right? So we need to make sure that we're getting all of those things in order to be able to just feel good, yeah? The second one is mental. So if we're walking around in the world with a lot of negativity, a lot of negative beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, and negative self-talk, then that can prevent us from thriving. And so we want to build that deeper connection to the thoughts within ourselves. The third one is spiritual. So our spiritual health. So are we creating spaces in the day for contemplation? Are we spending time in nature? Are we creating stillness in our lives in which to really digest everything that's been going on? And are we approaching things from the perspective of having a greater intention, maybe connecting with things like purpose? And then the fourth one is emotional. So are we allowing ourselves to fully feel our emotions? And all of these things are so relevant right now, particularly in the times that we're experiencing. So from an emotional perspective, are we feeling what needs to be felt? Are we allowing that to process? Or are we kind of pushing it away? Are we numbing ourselves using all of the various things we can numb? Yeah. So all of these 4 things we want to be nurturing, we want to be looking after. Now, of course, there are times when we may find that we're prioritizing one or the other. But if we're not giving a little bit to each of these areas, what can happen is we start to feel disconnected from ourselves. We can, of course, get sick, both mentally and physically. And we can feel empty and without any sort of direction or clarity in terms of where we're headed in our lives, yeah? And that's why each of these areas really needs love and attention. So I recommend and I invite you to, if you're on this path of really wanting to look after your health and your wellness, is to take a moment and think about each of these areas, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the emotional. How are you tending to each of these areas in your daily life?